So, in the second part of the lecture on Introduction to Research, we will be talking about why do we do research? So, we answer the question in this presentation, why do research? And our goal is to describe the purposes and importance of educational research. Note educational research. So now we're kind of like zooming in to our focus as pre-service teachers. This is about doing research in education. So, according to Pandy and Pandy, the general purpose and importance of research in general is, of course, basing on the definition of research, is basically to discover answers to questions through the application of scientific procedure. Sounds about right. The main aim of research is to find out the truth, which is hidden and which has not been discovered yet. Though each research study has its own specific purpose, some general objectives of research are as follows. One, to gain familiarity with phenomenon or to achieve new insights into it. What do we mean by gaining familiarity with a phenomenon? It's kind of like there is something new that is happening and we want to understand what is happening. We don't have much information about that phenomenon yet, and so we explore that phenomenon. So we also call this as exploratory or formative research studies. Second is to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation, or a group. So it's kind of like, yeah, we already know what's happening, but we want to describe how are the people doing in that phenomenon. So you kind of like list down their characteristics, demographics, distribution of the gender, or say preferences, and so on and so forth. That kind of research is what we call as descriptive research studies. We simply want to describe. The third is to determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else. It's like understanding where you are so that you would know where you will go. So that's why it's kind of like a diagnostic research as well. So when we say diagnostic, we kind of like have a an assessment at the beginning of anything so that we can somehow like relate that of how this particular measure would play out in the future. Something like that. So we call it a diagnostic research study. And finally, we have the kind of research that is aimed to test hypotheses of causal relationship between variables. So these are what we call as hypothesis testing research studies. We have um, experimental studies that are looking at the differences on hypothesizing whether the differences are equal to zero or not. We also have correlative studies or correlation studies, which would test the hypothesis of how much one variable is correlated to another, and so on and so forth. So these are the purposes of research according to Pandy and Pandy, general research, right? So for educational research, Creswell cites three major purposes of doing research in education. One is that research adds to our knowledge. Educators strive for continual improvement. This requires, therefore, addressing problems or issues and searching for potential solutions. Adding to knowledge means that educators undertake research to contribute to existing information about issues. Say, for example, we talk about motivation. Suddenly, when Ryan and Desi started talking about self-determination theory, we kind of like had a very massive influx of research on motivation, self-efficacy, and whatnot, because it has been found out that these self-determination theory kind of like underscore certain variables that many of the educators at their time did not really pay attention to. So it adds to our knowledge thing. And we now realize that motivation is a very important aspect of learning. So that's it. Second is that research improves practice. If it adds something to our knowledge and we appreciate that knowledge, apply that knowledge, of course, it should improve our practice. Research is also important because it suggests improvements for practice. Research offers practicing educators new ideas to consider as they go about their jobs. Research also helps practitioners evaluate approaches that they hope will work with individuals or groups in educational settings. Last purpose of educational research is that research informs policy debates or simply policy development. Research also provides information to policymakers when they research and debate educational topics. So you have heard of certain debates before that whether or not to abolish the K to 12, whether or not to do something like that and stuff. So research would inform us of whether we lean to one particular um, policy or not. So something like that. So in general, I would like to conclude this short lecture by really emphasizing that we do research simply because we want to understand the things around us. And in the context of education, we want to do research primarily because we want to add to the knowledge of how we do things as professionals and therefore improve our practice and inform policies so that we can deliver better education for our students.